17-year-old is capable of committing a violent crime with the same intent and malice as an adult. Why should he escape the full force of justice and consequences? Every year, 250,000 juveniles are processed through the adult criminal justice system, but this number keeps increasing. They are often committing life-destroying crimes while also ignoring the consequences. This also sends a message that bad choices can go unpunished if you're a child. We need to look at the intent and severity of a crime instead of the age alone. Protecting kids from appropriate punishments is not only fair to the victims, but also setting a bad example for society. In this debate, our team will provide evidence to prove that juveniles should be tried as adults, should be held accountable for their actions because they have to realize the serious consequences of the crimes they're committing. The severity of the crimes are damaging lives and setting a bad example for younger generations.
Some people believe that if a kid does something wrong, they should be tried as adults. But harsh punishment doesn't always solve the problem. In fact, it can make things worse. Let's say this, imagine you're a police officer and the store employee calls you telling you that a kid stole some diapers. When you go up to the kid, he tells you that his mom is a drug addict and he needed the diapers for his little brother. Now, I want to ask you something. If you were a police officer, what would you do? Will you really take away his future? Will you really put him in an adult prison and treat him like a criminal? Today, me and my team are going to be explaining why juveniles should not be tried or treated like adults, because they are still developing mentally and emotionally. They deserve a real chance of rehabilitation, and even if you didn't know, adult punishments often cause more harm than good.
Juveniles should be tried as adults because they have to realize that there are serious consequences for their actions. In the article, Juveniles should be tried as adults states, the juvenile court system is failing to protect citizens from the surge of violent crimes committed by juveniles. Another example is in the article, Juveniles should be tried as adults states, the juvenile court system is failing. The juvenile court system has been a far cry from justice. Families of murder victims, rape targets, and victims of other serious crimes have been left abandoned without a sense of closure or protection. Some feel like their loss was left unacknowledged. These pieces of evidence show how the juvenile court system is not doing a good job holding the juveniles accountable. The acts are permanent, and the victims are left to suffer with the consequences for life, while these criminals continue to destroy the lives of others simply because we have an ineffective system that enables it.
These criminals should be charged as adults in order to set an example for them and keep them away from less crime. In the article, twins, for example, the article twins sister confesses to a brutal murder of their mother, which was 16 at the time of the confession states. Jasmine and Tasmaya White had both signed a plea agreement in their case. They confessed and got 30 years behind bars. In another article, Scarlett Jacobson and Eddie Macklin, both 15 at the time of the murder states. The killers of Brianna Gay, who tried to get away with the murder, were referred to as Girl X and Boy Y in their trials due to their ages. They were convicted of murder in December. They were publicly named for the first time, as they were told they'll be detained for at least 22 to 20 years respectively. These pieces of evidence show that there are juveniles that are being tried as adults, which will make other juveniles think twice before committing that crime because of the consequences they could face.
Juveniles have to be tried as adults because without punishment, society has a higher percentage of having crimes and there will be more crime victims. For example, in the article, Juveniles have to be tried as adults, it states, without a tougher punishment system, society is left with a higher percentage of delinquents and a rising percentage of crime victims. Another example in the article, Juveniles have to be tried as adults, it states, minors must be fully for their behavior if we are to deter future delinquents from committing violent crimes. All in all, attempts to lessen these treatments and consequences will lead to an increase in crimes in the future. It's essential that we make it clear to everyone that these careless acts will not be tolerated if we want to keep people safe.
Juveniles should not be tried and treated as adults because their brains are fully developed as much as adults, so they're still learning from the actions and the consequences that they get while they're growing up. For example, from the adolescent brain development research indicates that human brain particular areas are responsible for impulsive control and decision making continues to develop until the early 20s. This development stage affects adolescent judgment and behavior. Also in the adolescent brain development research says due to their ongoing brain development, juveniles are less capable of understanding the consequences of their actions, making them less capable than adults. This shows how a juvenile's ability to fully know right from wrong and to hear the moment is not their fault because the brain is still developing. It is absurd for anyone to argue that these kids should be unfairly punished for something they have absolutely no control over.
Juveniles should not be tried and treated as adults because it puts them at a high risk of violence and trauma in adult prisons, which can cause long-term physical damage. For example, increased risk of harm in adult facilities. says juveniles placed in adult correctional facilities. Says juveniles placed in adult correctional facilities face high risk of physical and sexual assault, physical trauma, and suicide. The adult prison environment is not conducive to the developmental needs of juveniles. Also, in prosecuting young people as adults can undermine rehabilitation and fuel mass incarceration. And this says, and because young people are more likely to be victimized by adults, young people incarcerated in adult facilities have a higher risk of sexual violence and higher risk of suicide. This proves kids should not be treated like adults and juveniles because adult prisons are more dangerous and damaging. Instead of helping the children change them, being treated like adults in prison can break them even more, leading to fear, pain, and sometimes suicide.
Juveniles should not be tried as adults because instead of teaching them a lesson, they're punishing them. I said they're not. These punishments can make their behavior worse. For example, the sentencing project states incarcerated youth undermines public safety and damages of physical and mental health. And it can hinder educational and career success and often expose them to abuse. And it can hinder educational and career success and often expose them to abuse. And also on this website, PubMed, adolescent offenders sentenced to adult court are more likely to recidivate more than those retained in the juvenile system. And those two pieces of evidence show that juveniles should not be tried as adults because it can affect the educational and career success and make them reoffended again. So instead of punishing them as adults, the juvenile system shall recover.
Yes, these kids might be young, but let me tell you, they wasn't young when they were sitting there grabbing or shooting up schools. How would you feel that your 13-year-old daughter could your 5-year-old baby because she wouldn't stop crying? At the end of the day, a crime is a crime no matter how big and small they are. Kaylee, you said they couldn't control their actions, but the same way how they was controlling doing bad things and crimes, they could control by going to juvie and dealing with their consequences. Newsbreak will come out saying 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, maybe even 5-year-olds sitting there killing their parents, their siblings, even teachers shooting up schools because of their trauma. But their trauma would have never started if they never did what happened with their family. At the end of the day, a crime is a crime, so if they didn't control their self, well, maybe they should know how to stop doing bad decisions and work on what they have to do. Another thing, one of y'all said that they could do suicide and they had trauma. But imagine those parents that have to sit there and deal with them. They're dealing with getting calls that their son, their daughter, or whatever died.
The excuser puts them at a higher risk of trauma. It is often heard a lot, but what about the trauma that the families of the victim face and what they're put through? What about the lives that are lost? For example, in the article, juveniles should be tried as adults, certain circumstance states. They forgot to put themselves in the shoe of a parent whose 5-year-old daughter was killed because of her bike. They forgot a crime is a crime regardless of the offender's age. Another example in the article, juveniles should be tried as adults, certain circumstance states. Disaster strikes and we lose a large number at the hands of a young offender. Kaylee, how would you like that you took your daughter to school one day and that exact same day you got a phone call saying she died because of a juvenile that did poorly decisions? You wouldn't like it because I wouldn't either. How would you like that? That would be the classroom of your daughter that got killed. As you can see, the people's sympathy for juveniles caused a loss of lives and a family misery.
Just because a crime is serious doesn't mean the person who did it had to fully understand like an adult because their brain and thinking isn't fully developed. For example, on the U of News archive states a group of 2.738 youth transferred to adult criminal court reoffended more quickly and committed more serious crimes than matched samples of youth sentenced in the juvenile system. Also, according to PubMed, respondents incarcerated in an adult facility as youth poorer average mental health than those not held in adult prisons or jails over the course of this study, period. These two evidence shows that trying to treat juveniles as grown people leads to more and long-term health damage instead of helping them improve, and it makes things worse so they can be given another opportunity to learn their mistakes and grow.
People say juveniles should be tried as adults to give justice to victims and ensure that they get the closure they deserve. But harsh punishment isn't always what victims want. Justice can be achieved in many ways, such as assistance to help victims process and recover. According to victims of crime, many victims feel annihilated and dissatisfied with their justice process because it does not meet their need or allow them to participate meaningfully.
Also, on the same report, for restorative justice gives an opportunity to be heard, ask questions, and to receive some healing process. These two pieces of evidence show that they don't always want them to receive harsh punishments. They also want to be heard and included in the same factor. Restorative justice gives them the opportunity while also helping juveniles change and mature for the better.
Let's not forget that allowing juveniles to commit violent crimes and avoid the punishment that fetish crime will just cause them to increase every year. When we fail to hold young criminals accountable, we don't just fail the victims. We fail society and we fail the very idea of justice. This is why all juveniles must be tried and treated as adults. They treat their cousins, defenseless individuals. They need to realize that there are serious consequences for their actions while setting a bad example for younger generations. Our team firmly believes that juvenile crimes show adult level intent and harm. Only then can we protect our communities, uphold justice, and send a clear message. Violent crimes have serious consequences, no matter your age. As you can see here, most of the school shootings are caused by juveniles, 17-year-old, which means that they should be punished by their acts. This is just not okay.
Kids make mistakes, but they are still kids. They need guidance, not a prison cell. Treating them like adults can take away their second chance and turns one wrong decision into a ruined life. If we want safer communities and better futures, we must focus on understanding, support, and rehabilitation, not punishments designed for grown criminals. Juveniles should not be treated as adults in the justice system because they deserve to learn from they deserve the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, grow into better people, and receive support instead of being punished in ways that destroy their futures. Our team wants to end by asking you this. Would you rather see a young life ruined behind bars or see rebuilt with hope and a real chance at change?